Live from the Washington, D.C. area, all empowered citizens need to know about intelligent use of resources, smart governance, inclusive communities, smart industry, and healthy, thriving urbanization. This is Smart Sustainability, the TV talk about shaping a sustainable future in the digital age with Nicolette DeVidar. We are distressed. From the devastating situation in Afghanistan, increased danger of terror, unfolding migration, inflation, and imploding economic systems, incompetent political leaders around the globe, rising fears from a virus, and a daily pushed out message of death from about every angle. How to stay still, grounded, and joyful in the midst of increasing turmoil. Because let me tell you, the journey has just begun. So what can we learn from nature to stay above the water and not drown by being overwhelmed? Stop feeling powerless because we're out of our comfort zones and not being dragged into dirty wars and web of lies, manipulated truths, and one-sided perceptions that don't do anything but pitting us all one against another. How can we stay true to ourselves in the midst of conflicting information overload? How can you get to your own sustainability? Our topic tonight, good evening and welcome to Smart Sustainability. I'm Nicolette DeVidar. The world as we know it no longer exists. Time to stop pretending. Yet we're holding on for dear life in the hope of returning to how it was, or at least recognizing something familiar. We're afraid of looking at the situation how it really is. It has a lot to do with coping from delusion, from illusion. We see denial left and right, and that's not meant in a political sense. Denial of systems that no longer work, denial of incompetent government leaders around the world. There really is no other way of describing it. Denial of mass manipulation wherever you look. Denial of political structures that clearly attract the wrong type of people for the wrong reasons into government or leadership positions, independent of the country you're in. Denial of a world gone and a lack of vision in what it could be. But most above all, denial in our own power. It's a bit like denying when a marriage no longer works, but both partners are not ready to face the consequences. Sometimes it's easier to uphold an illusion than going through the pain of acknowledging a different reality. In the meantime, the world's unfolding. It keeps accelerating relentlessly. So while we're all going through our individual processes of dealing with the world around us, coming to grips with our own fears and illusions, what can we do to hold our heads above the water and not get drowned in the process? What can we learn from nature? Birds, trees, plants, cycles, energies. Joining us tonight is Logan Griffin. He's an energy healer, yogi, intuitive and meditation teacher who is dedicated to the awakening and collective evolution of humanity with a focus on personal healing. He's joining us from California. Joining us from Sao Paulo in Brazil is Ronaldo Pomponet. He's an entrepreneur and digital shaman who's significantly impacting collaboration among people and communities around the world, and he's also working with indigenous communities. Welcome both of you on Smart Sustainability. Great to have you on. Can you both hear me?
Thank you, Nicolette. Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much, Nicolette.
We're spanning
it's an honor to be here.
Since we're spanning quite a bit of the world, you know, it's actually amazing what technology does, thinking about this. So we see a lot of things happening. We see systems collapse wherever we look. We see here in America particularly, we've just come to grips of reality that a 20-year war was really just like out the window, putting a lot of questions behind the concept of war and where we've been, etc. There is a backlash to how it feels like, to what's going to happen to all the women in Afghanistan with male dominance around the world picking back up. There's just questions all over in what's going to happen, where are we, in the midst of a pandemic, etc. So, Logan, what's going on right now from a higher plane of perspective, explain to us exactly sort of what's happening everywhere. What do you see?
Well, it is a time of incredible change and transition, and incredible difficulty, challenge, and opportunity. And so it's really like so many things in our lives, how we choose to show up and how we act from here is what really makes all the difference. And the past is unfolding through the present into the future. And the choices that each one of us make every day is what's shaping the face of our destiny and fate as a species on the planet. And we are in perhaps this decade is a profound tipping point for where we're going to be and for future generations going forward. Symbolically, the year 2020 is kind of the balancing scales, 2020 on either side, and this vision of also kind of seeing 2020, seeing where we've been, where we are, and where we're going, and where do we choose as a species to go from here. So all of the global crisis that's unfolding is really presenting a unprecedented opportunity for humanity to consciously unite for the good of all and to correct the global crisis and to address it in a proactive manner rather than reactive and reverting back into more of our primal lower nature as individuals and as a species, back into more fear-based choices and reactions, and rather than more courageous, wise, unified action. So this is the choice. What are you going to choose? What are we all going to choose? Where do we go from here?
But right now, we're pretty much locked into fear when you look around. I think most people make choices right now based on fear. I don't even think you can say that people make a lot of choices. I think people independently sort of are driven by fear without even getting to making the choices. You see this differently?
Well, you bring up a very interesting choice. Language is a profound process for all of us, and even these little connotations of words, for example, the difference between a conscious choice and a subconscious decision, or a fear-blinded decision versus an empowered conscious choice. And that reflects even too in our languaging so much of this energy that when we are fearful, we tend to become more ungrounded and revert into more of our lower nature. We tend to become more controlling, more critical, more divisive, more separative, more hateful. And revert back into this kind of survival paradigm rather than thriving and uniting. And this is not a critique in any way of our instinctual lower nature that said it's very human to fear and to try to survive. It's also very human to love and to aspire toward higher ideals and to work together and to collaborate. So again, it comes to this choice that said we cannot really make an optimal conscious choice unless we are conscious. Choice is a function of consciousness, and so you're very spot on that many choices are actually often reactive decisions.
Ronaldo, are we in a time of destructive chaos?
I would. It's very. I think it's a unique time that we need to be careful with our opinions as well, because there's a lot of change happening and we are all learning on this process as well. I think using the hat of learners sometimes is better for us all. I think we have been taught to lead processes, to be the winners and blah, 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 all that stuff. I think it's time to observe more and to trust the process and be seated and learn more. I would like, unfortunately, there is a lot of massive destruction happening. And I think I would like to think that this is part of the process of evolution, what usually science call creative destruction. You know, I really prefer to frame it as a creative destruction process where some old patterns are being destroyed and new ones are being created. And this is one of the problems because destructions is faster than creation. And I think this imbalance in terms of time is what is generating this big stress, because we all internally know that we need something new. But in order to unleash the new and to manifest this new is what is being discussed here is a matter of co-creating. Sometimes I see people talking about rebooting the system or resetting the system. This is potentially a wrong mindset for what we have today. And my invitation for that is, let's try to figure out together a way to redesign the system, because reset or reboot brings us back to the old system that is the one that is creating the problems we are facing today. So it's time. People talk a lot about a new word that is very common everywhere in the world, is resilience, you know? And I think it's a very good word, but I think I have enough on resilience, because resilience sometimes leave you seated on fear. Oh yes, I'm suffering, but I'm being resilient. And I think it's time for us to start connecting with our own courage, with our own beliefs, with our own joy. Start connecting with different invitations, because there's that bad that cannot shift towards something new, because I think this is the time, and I think this is the invitation, and this is what I wake up every day to help, to unleash, be part of the ones that are creating the new pattern and the hope for the next generation, instead of sitting and just complaining about what being destroyed.
So I heard someone say, chaos is only threatening to those who don't understand its deeper meaning. Have you heard that before?
Yes, and I think chaos is how life operates. You know, we are always trying to be the engineers or the scientists that's putting order on chaos. And this has been our challenge since we started trying to figure out how to manage the four elements. Let's put it this way: fire, land, and fire, earth, water, and wind. So we're always trying to create tools to control the reality. And uncertainty is the reality. So, and I think this is what we need to understand. And it's also a very important moment for the whole world to really understand the role of death. You know, it's the only truth that we are born, and the only truth that we have. This could happen anytime. So it's a matter of being present and enjoy life more, and really understand that this is a normal process that we're passing through. But I think chaos is the new normality. Let's put it this way. Because it's where life happens. If you go to the jungle, this is what you're going to figure it out. If you go high on the mountains, you're going to see that you do not control like what could happen there. You just need to be seated and connected and trying to figure out how to survive on on many different circumstances.
So, Logan, are we finally facing up to the fact that control has always been an illusion?
Yes. It's a beautiful way of stating it. On a micro level and on a macro level, when we get the feedback that safety and control are relative and arbitrary constructs of human mental process, they're not actually realities. We often, as humans in our human psychology, tend to double down our efforts to try to be more safe and more in control until we kind of hit the wall to realize that there's another way of living that is not based in fear and control, and is a much deeper level of our innermost being that is always there, and we tend to become distracted from. And that's a big part of this current world system and situation, is a constant vying for units of human time, energy, and attention to keep feeding the system of consumerism, and to not really look within and listen within. And as you said in your opening, to the denial of our own profound power. And so it is a time of awakening. And that's part of the value of death and destruction and pain, is it's the first step into awareness, often out of our slumber of ignorance and of denial. Is the pain serves to initially wake us up to then be aware and then accept the situation. And from that awareness and acceptance, then we can be empowered to change.
I actually think this is really important when you look also at what's going on in nature. So, you know, here in the United States, we're just bracing, everybody's bracing for a new storm that's coming on. We talked a little bit about the control. We talked about our well, probably also in terms of we're all being so used to having this plannable life going forward, or the illusion of a plannable life going forward through a linear system, that we also felt that we can control nature and so on. And only recently we've learned that that's really not the case. So I want to talk a little bit about what we can learn from nature. I want to address a little bit that control that we feel that we need to have, even to dominate nature in a way so that we wouldn't have to face it in a way. And I want to look at the relationship that we have to nature, and the relationship also in mirroring basically to ourselves. So, because I think when you look at nature, there's really a lot we can learn, because it's been around for millions and millions of years, and it's still here. So obviously nature is doing something right, and we kind of get sort of lost in the middle. Let's talk a little bit about that. So, Logan, why are we so afraid of nature in general? It seems in the US particularly, we're afraid of the weather, we're afraid of the rain, we're afraid of the wind, we're afraid of almost everything.
I would suggest we're afraid of ourselves, and afraid of the other aspects of ourselves that we feel that we're somehow separate in this kind of egocentric and geocentric and anthropomorphic humanistic worldview, that somehow we see ourselves separate from anything, separate from each other, separate from animals, from nature, from the mineral kingdom, from the universe, and we are not. All separation is ultimately an illusion. And so we are really coming into terms to understand really what fear is, and the relationship between the belief in the illusion or perception of separation as it relates to the energy of fear. They tend to feed each other, kind of like a Mobius strip. So this is a big paradigm shift for humans to be humbled into the realization of our oneness with all aspects of ourselves, all aspects of life and creation and nature. And so I would suggest, as long as we feel separate from something, we will fear that perceived other. And so, and naturally, when we realize our oneness, we take care of ourself as one.
Now, oneness sounds always very beautiful, and depending on where you are on your individual journey. I can think of a lot of people that get really scared by the idea that we're one, particularly if you look at societies around the world right now. I think what can be said everywhere, it's about two. There are two sides, very polar opposites on things, very often already beyond reasoning. People can't talk to each other anymore. So the idea of oneness, what can we draw from nature about that? Ronaldo, you want to take that?
Yes, I can take that. Adding what Logan had just said, I think my own reflection, a very important step is to recognize that we are nature. First of all, we actually perceive ourselves as someone that a species that correlate with nature, but we are nature. When the human being, what is human? Human comes from humus, you know, so it's earth. So when we finish our journey in life, we become earth. When we're back to earth, and we become part of nature. This is very simple, and sometimes it's scary to think this way, because this can bring us a sense of insignificance. But sometimes it's important to understand that you are important, but you are not that important. Sometimes, you know, it's very important for everybody to have this self-criticism about yourself. And there is something that's important that Maoris usually do. Maoris from the Polynesians, the ancestors of New Zealand, Aotearoa. What they usually say when you go to a marae, that is the center where they sit and they reflect, and there is a community center. There are some of them, they usually ask, who are you? And people usually answer, oh, I am Reinaldo. No, Reinaldo is your name. I would like to say, to understand, who are you? Oh, I am an entrepreneur, blah, blah, blah. No, entrepreneur this is what you do. I want you to learn, who are you? So I think this is a very important question that we need to start providing our kids since the beginning, that they could self-reflect about who they are. Because one of the problems is we disconnect with nature. We don't perceive humans as part of nature. And we're always trying to create independence on people. You're going to earn, you're going to study and you're going to be a good student. You're going to earn a lot of money and you're going to become independent. And I think this what have happened with COVID have taught us that life doesn't work this way. So we are much more interdependent. And this provides us a framework of understanding that we are much more connected than we would even like to be. It's not a matter that I want to be connected. It is. This is how it is. Because if we feel ourselves as part of nature, we are part of the engine of this ancestrality that was here much before we came to life, that is ruling the process. And we are part of the creatures that is part of this dance. I like to believe it this much more, that is much more a sense of this oneness, as a sense of integrating yourself and really understanding that there's no disconnection from you to nature. You are nature, because we are natural human beings. We come from creation. So we come from an act of creation of two human beings that provided life to us. And this is natural. Well, everything that is natural is nature, you know? So this is basically just getting back to the basic meaning of it, could give us easier frameworks, because at the end, what I have learned on my journey as well is not, again, what I'm trying to say here are not bringing truths, but actually sharing some of my experience that actually could be good for some or not, but learning how to dialogue in this way through your own experience. I think it's the best way to really figure out our ownness. Because as I share my experience, Logan share his experience, you share your experience, we start gathering a knowledge that we all experience different things, because we are all coming from a different perspective of life, from a different journey, and we are all connected towards the same journey. And this is the beauty of the oneness.
So when we talk about reconnecting with nature, I think one of the key things we also need to talk about is how can we actually learn to work with the forces of nature and not against nature. That seems to me is a fundamental thing that would come next in terms of how do we work with it. But sort of, you know, when you swim against the current, then you usually have a hard time getting to actually ever to the place where you need to go. How do you teach people to let go of control, Logan, and trusting in the flow of things?
It's very simple. And the main initial focus is to bring people fully into the present moment. So much of what distracts us from the power of choice that we have to either hold on to the illusion of control or let it go is not being fully present in our body, present in the actual experience that we're having moment by moment. And we tend to suppress and deny and avoid and distract ourselves and or project our internal experience outside of ourselves, rather than sitting in the center of what can sometimes be incredibly uncomfortable and painful, to sit in the center of our fear, to sit in the center of our pain, to sit in the center of our current experience in the middle of our complex lives. So to be present, to be empowered by being present, and to realize that it's not too much for us. We have endless capacity to handle anything that we're experiencing. And part of this is education. In our current standardized curriculum, we don't often receive basic self-awareness methodologies or emotional kind of intelligence 101, or how to clear your fears, how to remain relaxed and centered and grounded in the midst of high stress environments. These are incredibly, immeasurably valuable life skills that are not currently part of our standardized educational curriculum around the world. In many ways, I wish I didn't have a job. I would much prefer everyone already have these skills. That said, because it's not part of our current educational system, a big part of my work is education in that way. So any human can be educated, and a huge part of it is information and value systems within communities, within nations, and the myth and the story that we tell ourselves as a species, what the purpose of life is, kind of the whole American dream. And maybe that which was once serving often becomes outdated, and the very thing that's now a stumbling block to something new and more beneficial. So, I mean, this is, of course, a huge conversation about all of human history and where we are and moving forward. That said, I would suggest by focusing on being very present, and all of the deeper wisdom and intuition that literally lives within our atoms, within our cells, within our breath, our being, our life, is accessible to any human who chooses to take their focus and turn it inward and center themselves in the here and now moment.
Just explain to our viewers, please, for a moment, what you mean by being present, because I know there's a lot of talk about this, but I also know that a lot of people really do not quite understand the meaning of being present.
Sure. It's as simple and profound as consciously managing your mental focus and to bring your mind fully into your body. The body is actually always in the present moment. So by being present, that means not focusing on the past, not focusing on the future, and any attention that's going outside of you to your senses, learning how to bring that more and more within yourself, centering, focusing, coalescing, and concentrating your mental focus in the direct experience of the sensate phenomena that comprise your perception. So meaning to root your mind in your senses, one of the most direct ways to do that is to focus on your breath. And then this is where it comes to concentration. And the hardest thing for the human mind to do is one thing consistently. Keep your mind on one thought, and when the mind naturally wanders, that's just what the mind does, you just gently bring it back. And when the mind wanders, we bring it back. And at first, this can be very difficult. And with a little bit of practice, we train our mind to be able to stay where we choose to have our mind be. And that becomes an empowered capacity by training our mind.
So, Ronaldo, you work also with indigenous communities. Do they go with the flow differently than we do?
Yes, naturally, yes. They are being somehow attacked to become less human beings and becoming more human doers, was what I usually say.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, because we have this word, human beings. It's just to be, to sit and be yourself. Like birds, you're talking about the bird. Let's check the bird. The bird sits on a tree, and the bird is just a bird. Just sitting, and the bird is so present on the moment that if anything attacks, boom, moves really fast.
Yeah.
But this creature sits, and traditional indigenous people, they are very much used to learn by observing, you know, and observation is very powerful, you know. It's one of the most powerful ways of learning is just seeing the world with your own eyes, interacting with the world with your own breath and feel it, because we are trained to be wrong usually. You know, it's everybody judging. No is a word that we received since we were born. No, this is wrong. You should do this. You should do that. You should. And at the end, the real work in life is to work internally. You know, it's looking more internally. And I usually say this, indigenous people, they stay much more within themselves. And that's why they seem more relaxed. They are trained to really organize their journey in life, to be present in the moment, as Logan said, is basically be. Just sit there and be yourself. There's nothing wrong with you. And this another important thing to be, and to the difference of being and doing, because we are not, it's not accepted by the society that is collapsing. I would say modern society. I don't like those words that much, but actually is, what do you do? What do you work with? And we need to ask more who you are.
Yeah.
Who you really are. Answer this question. Go inside yourself, because at the end, I usually say there's nothing wrong with you. the more I think, and I usually it's some of the invitation for a successful life is to earn stuff and to have material wealth, which is, there's nothing wrong with that if you do it consciously and you know what you're doing. But what I actually see as the real journey that I can figure out with people that get old and all that stuff is basically is the process of becoming your best self. So the present moment is the moment where you have the gift to reflect on yourself, to bring the best of yourself, and to trust your own process. There's nothing wrong with you. Just a matter of understanding who you are. And it's okay to think the way you think if you're respectable, if you really understand how to work in communities and respect others. But basically, it's a self-awareness of being, because we are human beings. We are not human doers. We're always being pushed to go outside ourselves to project something.
Yeah.
But the hardest encounter, and probably Logan is more experienced than me on that, is to find your own self. This is a long journey. It takes life to really figure out that. So, and it is where I think that is the most important journey, is to really know who you are.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think it is so essential when you look at all the things that are pulling us in all different directions. We have to become, in a way, like birds, to really see things from above and not get, if you look at when a bird flies, for example, it doesn't matter whether there's a storm or whatsoever, it's always totally centered and still. And I really like to talk a little bit more about, in terms of us developing more of a habit to observe our environment more in terms of what we see from the animals, from the plants, from the energies that are there. So we understand better that there's a lot to learn, and it mirrors a lot of what we're going through. Logan, can you give us some examples? Are you working with clients on this?
Well, yes. So one example is a tree. Mm-hmm. If you look at a tree and say, well, what is a tree? And that person says, oh, that's a tree. So, well, what is it? Well, it's a pine tree. It's an apple tree. Well, what's that? Ultimately, we see that the language that we place upon things is not actually the thing. Like the word silence is not silence. A tree, and this is where we see how many different languages there are in the world. It's a different word for the same thing. So words and language are relative and are a big part of what can divide us as a species. So it's also very important to be aware of our language. That's a whole other topic. That said, a tree, it has these branches that reach up and bring in the solar energy. Mm-hmm. Say, well, how do trees grow? Well, the scientist says, oh, photosynthesis. No, it's actually a miracle. Every life is run on miracles. The whole universe is an incredible miracle. The fact that anything even exists at all, I would suggest, is incredibly miraculous. So we look at this relationship, though, between the earth and its roots drawing nutrients from below and bringing in this energy from above. And I'll try to distill it in a very simple metaphor. And that is that if you look at nature, everything in life is growing, changing, evolving, and doing so naturally and in harmony constantly. We have the seasons, and everything's dynamic. So long live impermanence, long live the carbon cycle, long live the circle and cycle of life. That destruction and creation are literally an equation. Mm-hmm. They equal each other. So that said, everything in nature grows naturally, except for the human being, because we have a mind and we are in a very unique position as human beings. That said, naturally, we can learn how to be in harmony with nature by finding this balance between what we could call the divine masculine, or kind of father sky, father sun, and the divine mother, mother earth. Mm-hmm. That all things in nature grow naturally between these two principles. And if we look at the mother earth of this soil, this rich soil of unconditional love and acceptance of things just the way they are. You don't need to perform or make more money or be this or that way or look this way or lose weight to be totally loved and accepted just the way you are right now. That's the divine feminine principle, and we need that to grow. And then there's this principle of the light, the sun, this striving toward excellence, everything growing in the same direction to become something even more and that growth and evolution. So when we find this balance between total acceptance and acknowledging the past and the present as it is, and striving toward excellence, and we find that harmony between the two, as a species and as individuals, we can learn a lot from nature in that way.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. But it starts, of course, as you said, with becoming present and aware first, and then we can learn from this. I did want to say something about the trees, because there's evidence, and I think for our viewers, actually, I do want to mention that as well. So tree hugging is not just something that's sort of an ideological thing. Tree hugging actually has some direct health benefits that regulate the body. So it increases your oxytocin levels, it increases the serotonin levels, it decreases anxiety. There is research on that for those who don't believe like in the direct connection of nature, who need more research, but there is evidence of it, that when you actually hug a tree, it directly affects the cardiovascular system as well. So when you think about this, so the way we look at nature from more of a fear perspective, a keeping a distance perspective, versus actually going out and hugging a tree and knowing the benefits and going along with that, in other countries, I mean, they learned from that early on. So here we're a little bit behind on that. So how can we is there something you can recommend for people to, for example, go and spend time in the woods, go and do some tree walking? I know there's a lot of talk about what in German they call wood or forest bathing, which is literally going in communion with the forest and the woods, for example. So is there something you recommend to people, Logan?
Oh, absolutely. Nature is actually all around us all the time. Your nearest park, your nearest stream, the ocean, the lake, go out and connect directly with the living plants and insects and animals that are around, and just observe them. And that's something very practical each one of us can do. I personally get as much time in nature as I can as part of my self-care routine. I do my best to leave my phone at home or in my car as much as possible, to also minimize exposure, where we get so much screen time and electromagnetic interaction these days. So and also, if you can, sit on the earth or take off your shoes and walk through the grass barefoot, if that's something. And there's just immense opportunity to connect to the direct energy of nature, and from there the cosmos, and in every moment. So absolutely go out and connect. And on that piece too, if you connect with nature, something of true natural origin, or touch a tree, if you choose to, it can allow all of your tension and stress to dissolve from your body in that very moment. And if it doesn't all leave, guess what that means? It means that there's some part of you holding on to it. So a big part of our process is also to learn to let go.
So the letting go part, though, that's really difficult. So when you think about, I'm a horseback rider, and it always reminds me, the closer, very often when you're on a horse and the horse is really like nervous and antsy and wants to run through, the closer you hold the reins at that moment, the more difficult the horse becomes to control. So naturally, from that dynamic, we would see that even in life, you got to do the counterintuitive one, and at this moment, and actually let the reins go, right? Versus holding on. But initially there is this conditioning of just pulling everything back in. So how can we practice in day-to-day life to letting go of the reins?
To me?
Whoever wants to take a step first.
Ronaldo, do you want to jump in on that?
Oh my gosh, this is a tough one. I think this is a lot based on past experience, traumas, and usually people don't really trust their own process, because they were not trained for that. They were trained to not believe in what they feel, and really understand the signs of your body, signs of your natural forces that actually gives you this is how well you're sleeping, how well you're feeding yourself, how much comprehension you have with yourself, or you self-judge, you push yourself too much. It's never good. So are some mechanisms of internal control that I think is basically this horse control that Nicolette was trying to do. This has a lot to do with the way we behave with ourselves. is sometimes we take ourselves too serious, you know. Sometimes we put too much expectation on ourselves, and we compare ourselves a lot with others, and this sometimes is not a very good attitude, because I usually call it, this is the photography. This is a shooting a photography of a moment that you are comparing yourself with someone in a certain circumstances, and life is much more like a film. It's a set of these photographies that you will connect with each other to do your film. So what I would recommend is, don't take very serious just a single moment. If things are not going the way you want, just breathe, just accept. Don't push yourself too hard, because we are all on the same boat at this stage. And the last but not the least is learn how to ask for help. I think this is another important thing, because people were trained to be strong, especially the masculine force of humanity that have pushed men to be strong, and women and everything, and people are a little bit afraid of asking for help. I think this is very important, just to raise the hand. Hey guys, I'm not feeling well. Can someone help me, please? I think this is a sense of dignity for human beings. You know, learning how to ask for help and receive help and be open. One of the things that I also see that nature, and I can bring this later on the show, but nature operates in reciprocity. Okay, basically is giving, receiving, and nurturing life. Basically, this is how nature works. So if you have your personal way of measuring yourself, because measurement, people like measurement as well a lot, is how much I'm giving to myself, how much I'm receiving from myself, and how much I'm nurturing for myself and my life. I think these are, try to do this kind of math. If this is like a small formula that you can have every day, is how I'm dealing with my own life. How can I be more relaxed with who I am? Because sometimes I see people that are very, very well, very fine, but the external system don't treat them this way, don't see them this way, and they start misunderstanding who they are. So this kind of interaction with externalities is something that actually creates this tension, and being in the present moment, being relaxed and not pushing too hard, asking for help, being grateful for what you have reached. Because at the end, what I figured out in people, everybody's trying, you know, everybody. I see almost 100% of the people that I met in my life for different reasons, but everybody's trying. Everybody's trying. Everybody's trying.
So let's talk a little bit about energies and how nature can inspire us with certain energies that can lift us up. And conversely, if we kind of engage thought-wise in things that are not so good, like in being bombarded constantly with negativity or fear, how it actually drives our energy level down. Logan, can you explain to us, you're an energy healer, can you explain to us a little bit how that exchange, and actually Ronaldo gave the word for that also, because there is this reciprocity in everything, it's a full cycle, how that works?
Yes, thank you. So I want to layer in a couple things here. Interestingly, the very thing that can, part of our nature as human beings is to be herd instinct. So like a school of fish, they kind of move in unison, or a flock of birds. And that is neither good nor bad, and understandable as an animal. We're not technically only animal. There's an old saying that humans are part animal, part angel, that we're the bridge between the subhuman and the superhuman evolution, if you will. So all that being said, learning to be sovereign from our environment is something that we have not been taught. Sovereignty as a principle traditionally has not been something that has been directly encouraged within the power of the individual. And so that being said, here's an example in nature, and a practical example for managing our energy system is if you imagine yourself to be a cell, like a cell in your body, And if you put your hands around you, above you, to the sides, all around your physical body, and just imagine that there's this bubble or a sphere around you, and that's the cell wall for the cell. And we learn about cells in biology, and this is a great metaphor also for our bodies. You know, the cells in our body: healthy cell, healthy body; healthy body, healthy cell. Reciprocity, this relationship. So same too, healthy humans, healthy humanity. And humans actualizing their potential translates as humanity actualizing its potential. So to understand that the environment that we live in as individuals is absolutely profound. One more small analogy, and I'll layer these together, is if you had two identical plants, plant A and plant B, and they're the same age, same type of plant, and plant A has the ideal conditions for that plant: the right amount of light, the right amount of water, the right pH of the soil, etc. Plant B, the little bit too much light, not enough water, the pH is a little off in the soil. What's going to happen to the two plants?
Tell us.
Plant A. Well, please.
No, go ahead. Tell us.
The plant A is going to thrive, and it's going to fulfill more of its potential because its environment is supporting its optimal well-being. Plant B is still going to grow. It's still going to do its best given its conditions to thrive, because that's what life does. So all of us as individual humans are doing the best we have with what we've got, with what we've been exposed to culturally and socially and in our environment growing up. There's nothing wrong with the plant. And when we look at these two plants, we don't say, oh, good plant, oh, bad plant. We understand it's the environment of the plant that is nurturing its potential. So what we're getting at here is we can't wait for the world to be completely fearless or changed. That said, we can all do many things to create a micro environment for ourselves and to manage our cell. And that's the autonomy and self-organizing, decentralized power of our body, that each cell is self-governing. And so this is also a huge paradigm of the empowerment of the individual in these times, is coming into self-sovereignty and evolving new systems of global governance that are more decentralized and that really puts the power in the people. So when it comes to energy, the function of the cell wall for the cell, and we would normally go through a little dialogue that said, to save time, we'll just say that the main cell function of the cell wall is to protect the cell, to not let in things that aren't serving the cell, or that the cell maybe already has too much of, or so on and so forth. And to also keep the contents of the cell inside, to define the function of the cell, and then to be a semi-permeable discerning membrane to let in the nutrients and the things that are serving the cell, and then to also let go of that which was once serving, now no longer serving, the cell wastes. So this is a very good metaphor for our aura, for the human energy system, is that we are constantly interacting with the energy of the people around us, the environment around us, and we are constantly influencing and being influenced. Now, when we bring consciousness to our cell wall, we can manage the cell wall, and that's what the cell wall is. It's very conscious, it's very discerning, it's constantly, checking everybody at the gate. Is this toxin? Is this food? Is this helpful? Is this not helpful? We were simply never taught how to do this as human beings. We were never taught that energy is a thing, thoughts are things, they travel, words have major impact. The whole kind of sticks and stones may break your bones, words will never hurt you. No, not true. Words can be incredibly damaging or incredibly healing and constructive. So thoughts and words matter. And so managing our energy is as simple and profound as learning how to let in those energies that serve your well-being, positive energy, healing energy, and to let go of any energy that you have previously taken on that's not serving or no longer serving, and to do your best to shield and protect yourself from other energies. Not that they're bad or wrong, just that it's not serving, to not take on energy from the collective, for example, that isn't serving you. I guess I'll leave it at that. It's a big conversation.
Absolutely. But it also highlights that the body is actually much more consequent in terms of letting go of things that no longer serve than holding on. So when you have something in you, as you just described so beautifully in our body system, coming back to nature, that's exactly what happens when your body doesn't need something anymore or so on. They let go. So in psychological terms, though, or in the mental space, though, that's the one where we're clinging. And I really, I want to highlight one particular thing here, and that you said this so beautifully, that we manage our energy system. So when you look at all this negativity that's going on, I can see why people are depressed, quite frankly, because if you turn on the news, it's nothing but negativity. If you read the papers, it's nothing but fear and death. If you look around you and you see people fearful on the street, it gets your system down, because we operate in this energy system where naturally everyone is kind of kept low, which then brings up the question, though, and that goes to both of you, Logan and Ronaldo. So when we basically feed back that fear, that negativity, and so on, that's also a great way of actually preventing humanity of rising up to the place where we really would need to rise, because we're not focusing on the things we should be focused on. Who wants to
Can I help?
Yeah.
I can get this one. Help people to actually navigate out of this burden.
That's right.
There is a shamanic vision from the Incas that now is from the Queros, originally from the area of Peru, from the Andes, that the cosmovision correlates with what they say, the three worlds. And I think this actually helped me a lot, and I would like to share that could potentially helps other people as well. They organize the time and space in life in three worlds. The infra world, that is the world of the past, basically. That is, they have an animal for that. There are the serpents. Basically, is the world of the past, ancestrality. It's called Ukopacha. Uko means the belly button here. So it's your connection with ancestrality that actually means the past. You have the middle world, that is the world we live in, the world of presence, that is regulated by the jaguar, that is actually called Kaipacha, that is the living moment. And you have the upper world, that is called Hanakpacha, that is the world of the dreams and aspirations, creativity, that is ruled by the condor, as I see, I think, in your picture just there. And I think this is actually a very interesting framework to help us to navigate, and it's easy, because one of the things that I see that is putting people depressed, basically, depression for me has a very strong correlation with lack of expression. So people are losing the right to express themselves freely, be artistic, be creative, and people give away creativity to productivity. And this brought us to a stage of depression, because we are not self-expressing that well as we used to self-express in the past. So we are repeating too much others in order to reach success and to get it right. And one of the problems of that is some of the times we get judged. And if you see what's happening in the world, most of the things we see in the news is people trying to fix the past.
Yep.
So, and this is what the shamanic fixing the past is impossible, because the past is the past. And we keep talking about the past, what happened in the past, trying to fix the past, and we lose a lot of time because we are talking about impossibility. The only thing we can do is actually be present, be on the middle world, and actually be inspired by the upper world, the birds. Yep. Is the world of reflection, of intentions, of imagination. And this is the big message that birds bring to us. So the homework that we need today in order to get out of this mess is impossible to fix the past. So we need new agreements, and we need to coordinate society and ourselves, our families, our groups of connections, to really set it up a new way of thinking. We need to sit down. This is what we have. We've learned from the past. The past is a place of learning. The past is the place to check something that you need to check, but it's not the place to live in. We need to live the present and project the future. We need to become more jaguars with the intuitions of condors, of the birds, seeing the world from a different perspective. Yep. So I think training yourself to be prepared to really give space for intuition, give space for your self-expression, potentially is a very strong missing point. And if you go to media everywhere, US, Brazil, everywhere, People are trying to sort things from the last century and discussing things that didn't work on the past. And everybody is living from this old structure. And nothing is happening. We're just destroying value. Because imagine, and I would actually tease everybody to try to do that. Try to change anything of the past in your life and see how difficult it will be and how much time you're going to lose. And if you have done this before, please reflect right now what's the result of that. And think about things that you just commit. It is what it is. I've learned from that. And from now on, I'm going to do differently. And I think this is the small miracle that we need to trust this process.
That's a great point, Ronaldo, because even what you just said, like even just going back, sometimes, you know, you think like you can go back and meet even people from before or move back to old towns or things like that because you want to replicate an experience you had in the past, only to realize that you never can go back to the past because it's never the same. It just isn't. It only goes forward. And so rather than looking at, you know, what went wrong at things, I think this is a really great analogy that maybe this is our biggest wake-up point to see that, wait a minute, let's get in touch with our own power. Let the past be the past. Come to peace with the past because we can't change it. And then figure out, so how do we want to go forward? How do you want to live tomorrow? Most people know what they don't want, but they don't really know what they know. So how can we navigate that a little bit and sort of get towards that space, Logan?
Right now, this conversation, this alternative media channel, you know, it's happening. This is not a new thing. There's nothing new under the sun. We are all in this together. We're just waking up from the dream of separation to realize the truth, that we are all changing the world with every thought we think, with every word we speak, with every act of forgiveness, with every choice to find gratitude, even in difficult things. A big part of my work is demystifying mysticism. You know, I call it super, normal, extraordinary. This stuff is constant. Every human being in this world is an energy worker. We are all working with energy because we are all energetic beings. Every piece of us, every thought is energy. Every emotion is energy. Every choice is an energetic choice. Every aspect of our entire being, our entire physical body made of energy. We just split an atom and see how much energy is inside of us. So to understand that this it's nobody's special in my understanding. We're all unique and we're all immeasurably valuable products of the same life and same universe, the one consciousness, the one energy, the one life. And so what I'm getting at is that it all happens now, it all starts now, it all unfolds now, and our power of our attitude to adopt the attitude of gratitude for everything, to find forgiveness of the past. That's a huge part of what keeps looping us back, of our unresolved resentments and judgments of ourselves or others in the past. So forgiveness is incredibly transformational. So these little things are big things. And
that is a beautiful, we're actually almost out of time. So Ronaldo, I'm going to give you the final word. We have a few seconds left. What's your final word for this evening in going forward? What do you want people to remember?
Forgive us all. You know, I think forgiving is something very important, and starts forgiving your own self. Sometimes we actually do not forgive us, and we keep pushing us to a different way. And let's learn with the birds. Let's learn how to fly. We see ourselves in different perspectives.
Yes.
And my dream is to dedicate the amount of time that, if we dedicate the amount of time that we dedicate to discuss the past. If we dedicate this amount of
That's a great ending. I love that ending. I think flying with the birds, that's exactly what we need. So, thank you so much for being on with us tonight. And for you at home, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week, and you have a wonderful week, and hope to start flying like the birds. I think that's what we really need to do. Have a good night.